Everybody, Scott Carson, founder and CEO of Powered by MRP, here again with MedTech Marketplace. Super excited to have AJ on the podcast today. Ashley James, as many of you know her, she is a absolute maverick in the industry. She has been in the industry since she was 23. She has 27 awards in the space. Her businesses have been recognized by top doctors. She has an unbelievably great skincare line that 8 months after its launch was featured in Vogue. The list is just endless. Everybody meet AJ. I'm excited to have her on the show.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Let's dive right in. So AJ, I have almost now several times a day, clinicians reaching out to me that have made bad decisions related to stepping into the aesthetics industry. What do you see as the biggest mistake or fallacy that in this aesthetics industry that clinicians either misunderstand or make?
I mean, initially it's overbuying. It's, buying too much equipment up front, and that really results from the overpromise. These clinicians are traditionally in the medical industry getting insurance reimbursements. And as those insurance reimbursements become lower and lower, they're basically sold a dream that if they open up a med spa, buy all of this equipment, that the clients are just going to come their way, and it's a cash-based business. So from someone who is seeing the insurance companies reimbursing less and less and less, the dream of having this extremely successful med spa that is all going to be cash based, it seems very, very attractive. And so they're basically sold a dream that if you build it and you spend all this money, that it's just naturally going to come and you're just naturally going to make all this money. And that, I think, is the biggest misconception in the industry. And they're getting this information from the sales reps, people who have actually never started and opened and run a successful med spa. They're just selling the equipment. And so, the doctors open up, they buy all this equipment, believing that now that I have this equipment and I have this laser and I have that machine, I'm just going to make all this money. And they ultimately end up failing before they ever start, because they don't have the patient base. They don't have the right marketing in place. They don't have the right financial plan. How are we going to get those customers in the door? Because they don't just flock. I know that Wall Street's trying to get their teeth in this industry, and they're indicating that it's a booming industry. It is. It's typically growing nationally by 12.2% globally, as well as, right now it's a $32 billion industry just here in the States. But the problem is that with so many med spas on every corner, your customers have a choice. So if without a plan on how to get that customer to your door, they essentially can go anywhere. So just by having the right equipment doesn't mean you're going to be successful. You have to have the right plan. You have to have the right staff. You have to have the right training. And I think that's the other issue too, is that, these laser reps sell, $600,000 worth of devices, give them a day of training and expect them to be successful on that. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. I've been in the industry for over 20 years, and I could tell you that if I get a brand new device that I've never worked with before, it's going to take me more than a day to be familiar with it, to understand the capabilities of that device, be able to personalize it to my patients, and really be able to sound knowledgeable when I'm educating a patient on what this device can do.
Even for me to hear what you just said, this idea at the end that a day or two of training doesn't constitute the ability to get that device onboarded to your staff and get it implemented into generating revenue. And this is why, from a reseller standpoint, as you know, of both pre-owned and new, we see so many devices in this space, the majority of them that have rarely or ever been used. They're used during the demonstration and the training, but then they're actually not put into practice for so many reasons, such as staff turnover, the poor training, the lack of no patient base. The list is endless. And so we see the market is just ridden with device implementation failures, which really results in practice failures. So from your perspective, we know that the majority of the clinicians, as much as I think the industry would like to say that this isn't the case, but I believe this wholeheartedly, the majority of device sales have ended in failure, not in success. What is the best way for a clinician to dig out of this? Because the way the manufacturer creates predatory barriers and often illegal, at least unethical, unjust, to resell these devices. We try to help at MRP, but we're not always successful. And if we are successful, we can't really get them the return on the equity that they made. What is their way out? How can they, turn this into a profitable business, given they bought this dream that was really a nightmare?
Well, that's a good question. One of the first things when a customer calls us and basically says, AJ, we need help, the very first thing that we dig deep in is their financials. I want to see everything that they are responsible for, look at their entire overhead. I analyze their staff, what type of experience they have, and I really start developing an actual financial plan, looking at what their responsibilities are and what they really need to generate in order to break even and then start growing. From there, it's usually training the staff more thoroughly on these devices, setting up the treatments correctly, setting up the expectations for the patients correctly. The number one way to grow your business is through training. I mean, the more training your professionals have, the better they're going to either sell or perform. And I hate using the word sell in a med spa, because I don't feel like the clinicians are selling the services. I feel like the patients already know that they want to have these treatments done. You're just educating the patients on the opportunity for solutions that you can provide them. And but if you don't know how to identify which devices can create these different types of solutions, then you're not going to be able to properly educate your customer or set up proper expectations. And if they don't have the right expectations, and they could be dissatisfied with the treatment. But my first step is to go and really look at what we're working with the finances, and then develop a sales plan, develop a growth plan on how we're going to hit those benchmarks to cover the debt they're already in, as well as comfortably meet the financial obligations that the business has every month.
AJ, you made me think of two things. And the first, I'm going to talk about. I know a lot of clinicians that would say privately, after I've built trust or I have trust with them, they're like, AJ, I don't have any financials. We bought this thing, and then we bought another thing, and then we bought another thing, and all we do is spend an extra 3, 4, 5,000 a month. In some cases, I talk clinicians spending 15 to 20, and they're not generating any revenue. So the idea that you're asking for financials makes it seem hopeless, because I have none. So what would you say to them?
Honestly, they're not alone. I say this 9 out of 10 people that come our way, they don't know what their finances are. And that's because the laser reps are saying, here, this machine's $300,000. Your lease payment will be $5,000. All you have to do is sell 3 hair removal packages and you've covered your lease. So they're already setting the expectation that that's all they have to pay for. And they're not thinking about any of the other expenses to run a business. And honestly, most doctors, they're not taught business in medical school. They're just taught how to treat patients, how to provide solutions. It's the hospitals, it's the managers of the medical clinics that are handling all of this. So I guess, to answer your question, what do I say to them? I say to them, we have to figure this out. So this is when I tell them that they need to send me everything that they have so that I can start piecing through what obligations they are responsible for. I need to see what type of patient volume they have, and then determine what their KPIs are. And then I want to focus on those KPIs. That's really going to be the fastest way to kind of turn things around for them.
So real quick, you may want to explain to people what a KPI is. I know what a KPI is, but I think the audience, because remember, they didn't learn about KPIs. They didn't learn about metrics. They didn't learn about any of those things for the most part. So what is a KPI?
It's your key performance indicators. Where is your money really coming from? And so, for example, if you've got 3 treatment rooms and you've got 4 different devices, which devices are are services those devices providing that people are more interested in? Where are you making your revenue? If you're doing hair removal and skin rejuvenation and Botox, but nobody's coming in for laser hair removal, maybe your Botox is your key performance indicator. We also want to look at what you're generating per room. And, just to kind of a baseline, the multi-million dollar, to get to $1 million med spa, each room should be typically generating about $700 an hour. And so I look at, do you have too much space? Do you have not enough space? Where's your revenue coming from? And what can we do to maximize that? And if you have services where there's no revenue coming in from, we need to cut those out like cancer. So, a lot of doctors have devices they don't use, get rid of them.
Got it. Or trade for things they could use.
Right.
Lots of vendors out there, especially MRP, will trade. That is one of our kind of secrets or tactics to help clinicians dig out of the mess, is because not only did they buy a piece of equipment they can't make money with, they bought the wrong equipment. Maybe they have the wrong skin type for that particular device.
Right.
Because you're never going to meet a rep with the second best device. So given they all have the best device, no matter what your problem is, they're going to try to sell it to you. This is one of the problems with the sales structure, the way it exists in aesthetics, and for that matter, much of healthcare today, is there is no choice, as there is so much in every aspect of our consumer lives. I want to go back to something you said a moment ago about sales and how sometimes that's a dirty word in aesthetics. And I want to bring something to you that I love to say. Matter of fact, I said it to a customer yesterday on a call. It was a board certified dermatologist, and she was like, well, I'm not really comfortable talking about sales or selling. And I'm like, you know what, doctor, there are only two ways we can measure a business, only two. And that is customer experience, patient experience in your case. That's the one thing. Clinical outcome. How does that patient feel? How was their experience? What was the result that they got? The other thing is making money. Those are the two metrics we have. Now, granted, people say, I want to talk about the culture of your business and happy employees. I fundamentally believe you can't have happy customers if you don't have happy employees, because you have really happy employees and miserable customers. So, but you can't have great customers and have them happy if your employees are miserable. So I look at doing this kind of backwards of all the books. But how do you feel about those two key metrics, making money and customer outcome and customer experience?
In this industry specifically, this is a customer service industry. So I've said it to you before that, clinicians coming from a medical environment like a hospital or just a traditional medical office, they don't necessarily have to have that great bedside manner. They don't necessarily have to have that great experience, because the patients are coming in because they're sick. They just need a quick solution like a medication or a procedure. In the aesthetic industry, 90% of your customers are going to purchase based on how you make them feel. And so this is an elective business. They're not coming to you because, their hair removal is, their hair on their issue is creating a life issue. They want it removed because it's annoying. And so, with so much competition out there, that customer service experience essentially makes or breaks the deal. I mean, we've talked about being on the phone, just from the phone call. How are they answering the phone? Are they putting on hold forever? Are they distracted? Do you feel like you have their undivided attention when you call? Those little things can make or break a sale. And so the customer journey, I think, is equally as important as having the right staff and the right training and the right equipment. I think it is the most important, honestly, because even if you're the most expensive, or it doesn't even really matter if you're the most expensive or the least expensive, at the end of the day, people would pay a little bit extra for that extra customer service. They're not just going to pay extras because you have the best device. They don't like you, they're not going to come to you.
I agree with that. Let me ask you, going back to something we talked about a little bit ago, we have these clinicians that either have some revenue and maybe some KPIs, some indicators they can show you about the business. And then we have a whole group, you touched on, it's probably the majority, that have no revenue and no KPIs. And you made, I think, indirectly, that there is hope for these people, these clinicians, that they can get out. And I'm sure you have lots of successful stories, but I'd like you to share maybe an example of somebody that came to you with a lot of lease debt, huge payments, just no way out. There was no ability to sell the equipment because it was leased. There was no way to return it. They were just upside down. They made what they thought was a good decision to get control of their, or to have some free time, more time with their family, make some money, get rid of the reimbursement rat race. And all of a sudden they're now really in handcuffs. How did you and your group and your organization help them get get out of that? And maybe walk the listeners through and the watchers through how that takes place.
Like I said, I start with just getting an idea of where they're at financially, and then I identify what people are coming to them primarily for, and then I try to maximize on that. Like I was telling you, I have a customer in California right now who purchased about $700,000 worth of equipment and had absolutely no patient base. Just to
So
cover
wait a sec. I gotta make sure I understand this. They have $700,000 worth of equipment and no patients.
no
How
patients.
how does that happen? Because we know that in this space, there's not like one $700,000 device. Most of the devices are between 50 and 150 on average, about 75 to 80. So how do you end up with $700,000 in lease debt? How's that even possible?
Well, this physician was told that if he had all three of these devices, that he could build a multi-million dollar med spa and that he would generate six figures a month easily. And so that's what he did. He started off with the equipment, then he hired the staff, and then he tried to piecemeal everything together. And after about 8 months of trying to make things work, he ended up belly side up. And so, he had employees that didn't know how to use the equipment. They only knew how to do hair removal. So that's all they were doing. The microneedling RF that the rep said they just had to had, they had never even been able to use because they couldn't remember how to use it. And the training wasn't sufficient. And they have one device that they've used once or twice and again don't feel comfortable utilizing it because the training just wasn't sufficient. So in this situation, I'm still working with this customer. We redid all of their finances to figure out, what I mean, you can't work towards a monthly revenue goal if you don't know what your baseline is. So now he knows what he has to generate. And this physician has to generate $72,000 a month just to break even. 72,000. And so, I mean, I can work magic. Trust me, I can. So we've initiated our business builder program where we do some digital marketing for him for specifically the services that I know that his staff are comfortable in performing and that I know are low cost and high return on investment. We're doing some digital marketing, doing some lead generation. And then my team is physically going in and communicating with those leads and converting them on behalf of the med spa because
Wow.
we have to focus. Their staff has to be trained. So they're going through training on this end while my team is booking them. So it's a lot of wheels are in motion right now, but they're getting there. I'm really proud to say that they're at about 56,000 a month. This is how they finished or are finishing February so far. And that went from $24,000 to 56, 57 so far for February.
So they're a couple of months potentially away from break even. And just for those that are that when you start generating $70,000 to 80 to 90,000 a month in revenue, that is $1 million business. And granted, the way AJ's explained this, it's effectively break even. But if you think about the KPIs that AJ was speaking to, and you start to think about incremental increases to the patient experience, which then translates to incremental income generation on top of your fixed cost. Remember that 76,000 AJ's talking about covers your fixed
Mhm.
cost, your overall overhead. And so now if you make an extra 10,000 and your fixed costs, with the exception of, let's say, the injectables, stays the same, which it probably will, now you're putting money in your pocket. You multiply that $7,000 or $8,000 over 12 months. Now you potentially have a business generating 100,000 a year. And this
Mhm.
is what you're trying to get to, but it only can get through grit and grind. AJ, you and I have had a couple of conversations as we got to know each other over the last couple of months, and you and I believe a lot in grit and grind. I know in my own experience that people look around and say, God, Scott, you got this great business, you got a great team, you got customers that love the brand and love what you're doing, and you live in Park City, Utah. Things are, you just live the dream. And what I like to say when people say that to me is, I really live the nightmare. Having thousands and thousands of lasers installed around the world isn't necessarily a dream. It's a lot of work, and to
Mhm.
keep them up and running and keep people's costs down, and to help people like your client that is trying to rebuild after the disastrous start they had. But I had some really rough days. I had some really rough years where I was knocked down to the mat. And I got to be honest, There were times I didn't think I could get up. I was just so beaten through mistakes I had made or failures that I clearly had to learn, which I now call lessons. Tell us about your experience, just the way you've articulated what you just said about helping somebody dig out of this mess. You just had such a smile and enthusiasm about helping them. I'm sure this didn't all come from just a lot of successes. I'm sure there were some missteps along the way. Tell people about that, because I think people look at you and say, God, she's got this great business. She's won all these awards. She's a top, considered one of the top doctors. All these, even though you're not a doctor, but you're considered part of that group. Tell us how you got here.
I mean, it wasn't easy. I mean, I think I've shared with you, I opened my first clinic at the age of 23. And that was back when there were no rules and regulations surrounding the aesthetic industry. And so being a non-physician, I got wrapped up into all of that transition. So as the industry started to evolve and I was very successful at what I was doing, I gained the attraction of my competitors who were physicians who would challenge me on the fact that, well, do you have a right to own a business because you're not a physician and you're playing in the physician arena? And so I have a history of my physician competitors coming after me, filing fake or malicious complaints against my licenses and my business because I wasn't a physician and claiming that I had no right, to do this. And, most of them I came out just fine, but some of them were really hard. I mean, I was in the news at one point, being accused of claiming that I was a nurse when I wasn't. I was, and when you're on the news and the news never reports anything correct, right? Their goal is to get people to watch and to pay attention, and so things were skewed and misinterpreted so many ways that it was embarrassing and it was hard. When you spend so many years building your career, doing it the right way, getting the right education, getting the right certification, and really building a successful business, for someone to just so easily say, nope, that's not okay, and then, try to sabotage you. It was really hard for a long time, but, I came out on top and, I stayed true to my truth because I had set my business up the right way. I know I had the right training, my customers, I had no patient complaints, my employees were happy, and I just rose above all of it. And the last time I went through a major attack, a month after it was all said and done, I won another Best of the Best award. So it was the community was providing these awards to me, whereas my competitors were trying to create those waves. And, my advice is just head down and just, focus on your truth and just keep plugging forward, because getting to success, getting to true to success is not always easy. No successful person is going to tell you, oh yeah, everything just went my way and I had no bumps and I just became this millionaire. They're going to tell you that they weathered some storms. And so I think that's important with doctors getting into this industry, because that does bring up a point. I have a lot of physicians who are not in dermatology or plastic surgery who are getting into aesthetics. They're urologists or they're family medicine physicians or they're, an internist, and they think they can open up this cash-based med spa and still run their urology practice or their, internal medicine practice. And it's not a 9-to-5 job. I mean, no business is a 9-to-5 job. You don't clock in at 9, run your business, and clock out at 5. It's 7 days a week, sometimes all night long. I mean, your business is like a child. It can never be left unattended.
That is a really good point. I would say it's like a very bad child.
Yes, it's a 2-year-old.
It is yes, it is a 2-year-old. Such great examples of that you gave of kind of grit and grind and digging it out. And maybe this is a little bit too personal, but I'm just curious. I am curious, and I could answer it for you as well if you were to ask. But what got you through that? I mean, you're on the news being attacked. I'm sure your kids are watching it. Your husband's watching. Your friends are. Your employees are. It's probably affecting the business to some extent. What gets you through that? Because remember, a lot of the people listening to this aren't going to look at you and me and believe that we've had any strife or difficulties. And I can tell you that I've literally been in the street. I was rocky on the mat. And how did you get through it? How did you get through that grind and grit? It's easy to say grind and grit looking back, but what was it that got you through it?
Honestly, and what I love to say now is I built my empire on the stones and bricks that you threw at me.
Mhm.
Um, Everything that was thrown my way, I took as an opportunity to learn. And if you're attacking me because you don't think I'm compliant, let's make sure I'm compliant. If you think I don't have a medical director, let's get two medical directors. If you think that I'm practicing outside of my scope, let's get AMSPA involved. That's kind of, you push me down, I'm going to get back up. I'm going to fight for my right to be here, which is what I essentially had to do as a non-physician. There was no law stating that I couldn't own a practice. There was no law preventing me to do that. And so even though I was being accused of practicing outside, I mean, one of these doctors said that I was claiming to be a nurse when I didn't even have a high school degree. And what's interesting about board law versus regular law is that you can make a complaint and it can just be anything made up, and it's it's a charge. Versus civil law, you have to have evidence. So I literally was having a meeting with the board law, and they made this accusation. I'm like, well, here's my nursing transcripts. Oh, and by the way, here's 47 certifications in lasers, and here's, all these different things. And it's like, again, you can't just say something and just, penalize somebody when there's no backing behind it.
There's
Um,
there's no question that
yeah.
that's the case. I want to share something with you about what you said, but first you got to repeat this. You built your empire on the stones. What else was it? I want you to repeat.
Stones and bricks that you threw at me.
Got it. So I have something that I share with my team, which is, and there's something that you said about the information that those stones, when they're being thrown at you, when they hit you. And I say, when you're being pummeled with stones, they're really not stones. They're actually stones of gold.
Mhm.
And if you absorb those things, I mean, man, they hurt, because when somebody's attacking you, there's some truth in it. There's always some truth. They're not going to attack you with something that doesn't have a sliver of truth in it, because then it would bounce off you. It wouldn't mean anything. So there's a little bit in there that they know is going to get to you. And
Mhm.
that's why they do it. But if you accept it as a gold bar, okay, which is what it is, and you build on that, it is nothing but gold. That's all it is. And so when people attack me, which is frequent, I'll look at that and say, okay, there's something there that I need to learn. There's a lesson in this, and I need to absorb it, understand it. I can't fight back. I need to recognize where it's coming from and why. And in some cases, maybe there's an apology attached to it, or maybe there's a conversation or a clarification. In your case, sounds like the same thing.
Well, my competitors never apologized.
Well, often mine don't either.
No, but
Mine don't either.
what they hate hearing is that they actually helped me, because like I said,
Yes.
they did this over and over and over again. It was usually just, they were always accusing me of practicing outside of my scope. So I was properly set up and structured the right way years before AMSPA ever got around and saying that you have to have an MMO, a medical management organization. I was set up properly years before that happened, because these stones, yeah, I was being accused of these things. So I'm going to make sure that I'm compliant. I'm going to really button this up.
Mhm.
Um, and so my advice to people that go through these hardships, is take that as a lesson, and make the changes that maybe need to be made, or that you didn't know need to be made, to strengthen your business even stronger. But on a completely unrelated issue, when you asked me what I did to get through
Mhm.
that, it was just keeping my head down and focusing what I knew my truth was. But honestly, my faith, my faith is what got me through it. It was pretty bad.
You know, um, uh, two things you say there, and I'm going to jump onto something else you said a moment ago about MMOs, but because I think there's some interesting information in that as well that you could share. But I feel the same way. Everybody's got a different view of faith, and and also your truth. When I was being beaten down, I knew who I was, and I knew what I wanted to do and what I was capable of, and it fueled me.
Mhm.
It wasn't actually there. There was times I wanted to give up, but really, what I did is I turned it into fuel. And the other thing was faith. And faith takes a lot of different. There's a lot of different foundational faith-based ways to go about getting through a difficult situation. But I agree, having faith that there's some good and something positive that will come from this really will grind you through. So getting back to MMO, one of the things that you shared with me a few weeks ago is this idea of an MMO, and I understood what it was, but I think you should explain, break it down what an MMO is, and that many of
Yeah.
these med spas are operating um, potentially or actually illegally. And
Yeah.
that I never understood this. So can you explain this to people? Because I think we have a lot of viewers and listeners out there that are going to go, "Oh my God, I'm not operating correctly."
Right. Well, like I said, I've known Michael from AmSpa before AmSpa even existed. And as I talk about how this industry is completely evolved, medical spas are now, they're essentially classified as medical entities. A medical spa service is the practice of medicine.
Is this true in all states or
Yes.
just some states?
Nope,
This is
all states.
all
So
states.
as the industry has evolved, medical spa services are now classified as medical services. So that being said, a medical spa is a medical entity. A non-physician legally cannot own a medical entity. Only a physician can. So you have nurses opening up Botox clinics, and you have nurses or estheticians opening up their own med spas. All these non-physicians getting into this arena. But the problem is that if you do not have a physician owning the business, you're illegal. You could have jail time for that. So a lot of people just don't know that. I would say 8 out of 10 med spas are practicing right now illegally because they don't know that. And if
That
you
that
are not
that that seems crazy. How could they not know this? I mean, and when you say this is required, who's requiring that?
the
Not
medical boards, the
the
medical
medical.
boards. And so here, I think because this industry, even though it's so big and it's so booming, it's also moved so fast. So 20 years ago, nobody even really could spell the word aesthetic in this space. Nobody really knew anything. And so you have a lot of business owners who've been business owners for 10 years who never had that physician associated with their business, that have always been practicing illegally and just not known it. And so go
So
ahead.
I just you've got me really intrigued by this. So let's say that you start out as a hair salon, for example, and you really don't need it. You're not required by any medical board to do anything. You're a hair salon, and then you
Right.
start migrating into energy-based device services, and you start doing some hair removal. And you've got a medical director that's reviewing your charts, and you're paying 500 to 1,000 a month, and things are just going along. You're explaining to me something that I didn't even understand until just now. I understood the concept, what you were saying when we spoke last time, but you're saying that that hair salon is really operating illegally or surely incorrectly at the
Mhm.
very least, because once they start getting into aesthetic based treatments, they're really a medical facility and must be owned by a medical licensed practitioner.
Yep. You cannot operate a medical treatment or perform a medical service outside of a medical company. So if you are doing medical services in a hair salon, that is a huge issue. That's a
Wow.
huge medical board issue.
Sorry to interrupt, but let's go back to that same place. You're listening to this, watching this, and you're like, wait a sec, I don't have that. I have a medical director, but I don't have that. What steps should they take? You mentioned AmSpa. I'm sure there's a path there. What should somebody do today to start getting in compliance or beginning to get educated on what they should be doing?
I mean, they can definitely reach out to us. We do this all the time, and we work directly with AmSpa on some of these cases, as well as just independently from them. We really just have to set up a separate entity that is the medical entity, and that medical director has to essentially be the owner of that medical entity. Now, I know that sounds crazy because if they're not an owner of the business, they're just the medical director, then why would you make them an owner of the medical entity? Because that's the law. If you want to own a med spa and you're not a doctor, that's the way you have to set it up. And so essentially, the doctor owns the medical entity, and then the non physician owns the MMO. And then there's an operating agreement on how the two entities work together. And that is the only way that it can be compliant and legal. Essentially, all of the money is run through the MMO, and then the medical director is paid the profit or the medical director fee at the end of the month. Um,
AJ, this has been one of the most fascinating discussions I've had in a long time. We've covered a lot of ground. It's been great to have you on the show. And over the last couple of months, getting to know you has just been a real pleasure and the best part of my beginning of the year. And I'm grateful for being able to get to know you and have you on. How do people get a hold of you and your team? What's the best way to reach you, either by email or phone or both?
by going to our website, dermaestheticconsulting.com, or by giving us a phone call at 833-432-2669. If you want to reach me directly, my extension is 700.
AJ, thanks again. Loved having you on and
Thanks.
look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye bye.
Same here. Have a great day. Thanks.